The proximity alarms screamed their death song as my cargo hauler, Tin Prophet, spiraled toward the swampy moon below. What should have been a routine supply run to the Arcturus mining station had turned into a nightmare when pirates ambushed me at the jump point. My ship was dying around me, life support failing, hull breached in 3 places. Kepler's rest loomed ahead, a forgotten world shrouded in perpetual mist, its surface a patchwork of methane swamps and twisted metal graveyards where ships came to die. The automated beacon still broadcast its ancient warning, quarantined world. Approach forbidden by Galactic Accord 2387. Perfect. Even if I survived the crash, I'd be stranded on a toxic wasteland that hadn't seen a rescue ship in decades. The impact drove consciousness from my skull like a nail through wood. I awakened to the sound of welding torches and the acrid smell of fused metal. My body ached in places I'd forgotten existed, but I was alive somehow. Soft bioluminescent panels cast an ethereal blue glow across walls constructed from salvaged hull plating, their surfaces etched with symbols I didn't recognize. Medical. Patches covered my arms and chest, their surfaces pulsing with healing nanites, far more advanced than anything in my first aid kit. You're awake. The voice was barely a whisper, melodic yet cautious. I turned toward the sound and froze. Standing in the doorway was a girl, no, not human, but close enough to trigger every protective instinct evolution had hardwired into my brain. She stood perhaps 5.5 feet tall, her skin a pale lavender that seemed to shimmer in the artificial light. Large, dark eyes dominated her delicate features, and intricate silver markings traced patterns along her temples and down her neck like living tattoos. Her hair fell in waves of deep purple, and she wore a jumpsuit patched together from various starship uniforms, a walking museum of galactic conflicts. "Who are you?" I managed, my voice cracked and dry. She retreated slightly, as if my words were physical blows. I am Zara. You crashed. I found you." Her galactic standard was perfect but stilted, each word carefully chosen. More concerning was the fear in those enormous eyes. Not fear of me, but fear of something else entirely. She glanced toward the entrance of her shelter, constructed from the bridge section of what looked like a hegemony destroyer, and I caught a glimpse of the sophisticated early warning systems she'd rigged around the perimeter. My ship? I asked. Damaged, but repairable. She stepped closer, her movements graceful yet hesitant. I've been working on it. Your cargo hold wasn't breached. The medical supplies you were carrying, they helped save your life. Medical supplies, right. I'd been running a shipment to the mining colonies when the pirates hit. How long was I unconscious? 4 days. She knelt beside the makeshift bed, checking the readings on a medical scanner that looked like it belonged. In a core world hospital, your species heals remarkably fast. I've never seen such rapid cellular regeneration in warm-blooded bipeds. Her clinical detachment made me study her more carefully. The silver markings weren't tattoos. They were subcutaneous implants that pulsed faintly with their own light. Her fingers were longer than human normal, ending in what looked like retractable tool tips rather than nails. This wasn't just any alien girl playing hermit on a dead world. "What species are you?" I asked gently. The fear returned to her eyes, and she looked away. "It doesn't matter. We're extinct." Asterisk over the following days, I learned to navigate the careful boundaries of Zara's world. She would work on my ship with an engineering brilliance that left me speechless, then retreat into herself whenever I asked personal questions. Her shelter was a marvel of improvised technology systems from dozens of different civilizations, integrated with an understanding of physics that made my head spin. She'd salvaged components from crashed vessels spanning 3 centuries of galactic warfare. Vegan biocomputers networked with Terran quantum processors. Andromedan power cells feeding Centauri shield generators. And somehow, impossibly, it all worked together in perfect harmony. Your people must have been incredible engineers, I said. On the sixth day, watching her recalibrate my ship's navigation array with tools she'd built from scratch, Zara's hands paused in their work. We were the Kethver, the memory keepers. She touched the silver markings on her temple. My people didn't build things. We preserved them. Knowledge, culture, history, everything was stored here. She tapped her skull. Living archives. Each of us carried the memories of thousands who came before. The implications hit me like a plasma blast. And you're the last one. Yes, the word came out broken. When the hegemony found our homeworld, they didn't just destroy our cities. They hunted us specifically. They knew what we carried. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. 70,000 years of accumulated knowledge from across the galaxy. Scientific discoveries. Artistic movements. The location of worlds that were thought to be myths. All of it locked in our genetic memory, and all of it dying with each of us they killed. I set down my tools, giving her my full attention. What do you carry? Everything, she laughed bitterly. I was young when the hegemony came, barely past my first memory integration. But when the elders realized what was happening, they ... They forced the emergency transfer protocols. Every archive on the planet downloaded their contents into the few of us who might escape. She stood and walked to a wall covered in star charts, her finger tracing routes between systems. I know the true location of the progenitor ruins, the formula for anti-aging treatments that the core world spend fortunes trying to rediscover, the location of 17 inhabitable worlds in dark matter regions that don't appear on any scanner. Art forms that could revolutionize human culture. The cure for the Rigel Plague. My breath caught. The Rigel Plague had killed millions on the outer colonies. You could save lives. I could. She turned to face me, and I saw tears tracking down her cheeks. But the knowledge will die with me unless someone agrees to undergo the neural bonding process. It single quotes s.dangerous. Most alien species lack the neural plasticity to survive it. Their minds can't handle the data integration. What about humans? She smiled sadly. Your species is unique. You have something my people never developed, the ability to form deep emotional attachments to memories that aren't your own. You tell stories, create myths, make legends out of fragments. My people were analytical, logical. We preserved facts, but we never learned to make those facts part of our souls. I stared at her, understanding dawning. That's why you saved me. Not because I was dying, but because I'm human. Yes, she looked away. I've been alone for 3 years, watching your species' ships pass overhead, knowing that every day that passes is another day closer to all of this being lost forever. When your ship crashed, when I saw you were human, I thought maybe she trailed off, but I understood. She wasn't just looking for someone to preserve her people's knowledge. She was looking for someone who could love it the way it deserved. To be loved *. The neural bonding chamber was a thing of beauty and terror. Zara had constructed it in the deepest part of her shelter, using technology salvaged from a dozen different species. Crystalline matrices hummed with stored energy, while quantum processors calculated probability streams that hurt my eyes to look at directly. The process takes approximately 6 hours, she explained, her hands dancing over controls that seemed to respond to her thoughts as much as her touch. During that time, our minds will be completely synchronized. You'll experience not just my memories, but the memories of every Kethfor whose knowledge I carry. I studied the chamber. It looked disturbingly like a medical pod crossed with a torture device. What are the risks? For your species? Neural cascade failure in approximately 30% of cases. permanent memory integration disorders in another 20%, complete personality dissolution in 10%. She met my eyes. The remaining 40% usually survive with only minor psychological trauma, usually. The test subjects were volunteers from various species. None were human. She touched one of her temple markings, and I saw data streams flowing beneath her skin. Your neural patterns are different, more adaptable. I believe the success rate would be higher, but double quotes, but you don't know. No. She looked small and lost in the blue light of her machines. I've been preparing for this moment for 3 years, building the equipment, running simulations. But I've never found anyone willing to risk it. I walked to the viewport that looked out over the swamp. In the distance, the wreckage of 100 ships created a metallic landscape under Kepler's 2 moons. Each of those hulks represented dreams ended, lives lost, stories that would never be told. Tell me about your people, I said. Not the technical specifications. Tell me who they were. Zara joined me at the viewport. We were gardeners, in a way. Not of plants, but of knowledge. Every Kepler spent their life learning, absorbing information from other species, integrating it into our collective memory. We believed that consciousness was the universe's way of understanding itself. Her silver markings pulsed brighter as she spoke, and I realized she was accessing memories as she talked. My grandmother carried the memories of a human poet who lived 3,000 years ago, a woman named Sarah Chun, who wrote verses about the loneliness of space travel. Through my grandmother's memories, I know what Earth coffee tastes like, what it feels like to watch a sunrise over the Pacific Ocean, the sound of human children laughing in playgrounds. She smiled. I've never been to Earth, but I remember. It like home. What was your world like? Quiet. We built our cities in harmony with the crystal formations that naturally amplified thought. The architecture was alive buildings that grew rather than being constructed, powered by the collective unconscious of their inhabitants. Her voice became wistful. We had art, but it was conceptual. Sculptures made of pure mathematics. Music that could only be heard by minds linked in harmony. Literature that existed as shared experiences rather than words. I tried to imagine such a place and failed. It sounds beautiful. It was sterile. The admission surprised her. We preserved everything but never created anything new. We were so focused on maintaining the past that we forgot to build a future. When the hegemony came, we had weapons that could level continents, but we'd never learned to hate enough to use them. She turned from the viewport, and I saw something fierce in her expression that hadn't been there before. That's why I chose you. Humans don't just preserve knowledge, you transform it. You take facts and turn them into stories. You make the past live again in the present. She gestured toward the neural bonding chamber. If you undergo the process, the knowledge won't just survive. It will grow, evolve, become something my people could never have imagined. I looked at the chamber again, seeing it differently now. Not a torture device, but a cocoon. A place where 2 minds could merge and create something greater than the sum of their parts. How do you know I'm the right person? Because you've already started. She smiled. For 6 days, you've listened to fragments of my people's story, and you've begun weaving them into something larger. You've asked about our art, our culture, our dreams. You care about us not just as a repository of useful information, but as people who lived and loved and lost everything. She was right. Somewhere over the past week, Zara had stopped being an alien girl and become someone I cared about. Someone whose pain was my pain, whose hope was my hope. If something goes wrong, then at least someone tried. She touched my hand with her strange, elongated fingers. And if it works, my people's greatest discoveries won't die with me. The cure for the Rigel plague will save millions. The coordinates. For those hidden worlds will give your species room to grow. The cultural knowledge will enrich human civilization for generations. I stared into her dark eyes and saw reflected there not just her own hopes, but the accumulated dreams of an entire extinct civilization. All right, I said. Let's do this. Asterisk, the neural interface felt like ice water flooding my veins. Zara lay in the parallel chamber, silver markings blazing like stars as the quantum processors established connection protocols between our minds. Through the transparent aluminum barriers, I could see her eyes wide with concentration, her lips moving in what might have been prayer or programming code. Integration at 5%, her voice echoed strangely, coming from both her lips and directly into my thoughts. You should begin experiencing peripheral memories soon. The first sensation was synesthetic. I could taste the color blue, feel the weight of starlight on my skin. Then came fragments, a child's laughter that somehow conveyed mathematical principles, the scent of flowers that bloomed only in 7-dimensional space, the feel of crystalline architecture growing beneath my hands. 10%. How are you feeling? Like I'm dissolving, I managed. The boundaries between myself and the flood of alien experience were becoming increasingly unclear. I was Marcus Shaw, human salvage engineer, but I was also Veltar the chronicler, who had spent 6 centuries documenting the migration patterns of space whales. I was Zithara the philosopher, whose thoughts on consciousness had influenced 17 different species. I was thousands of Kethvar, their memories layering like sedimentary rock in my expanding mind. 15%. Marcus, I need you to focus on your core identity. Don't let the memories overwhelm who you are. But it was becoming difficult to remember who that was. The human concept of individual identity seemed primitive compared to the Kethvar understanding of consciousness as a flowing river of shared experience. Why cling to the small, isolated self when I could be part of something infinite? 20%. Marcus. Zara's voice cut through the expanding chaos in my mind. Remember Earth. Remember your first time seeing stars. Remember why humans explore. Earth. I grasped for the memory like a drowning man reaching for driftwood. A small blue world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. Childhood nights spent on rooftops, staring up at points of light and dreaming of the distances between them. The first time I'd left Terra's gravity well and felt the terrifying freedom of open space. Better, 25%. Now the memories came more organized, flowing through the scaffolding of my human consciousness rather than overwhelming it. I experienced the last days of Kethvar, primed through a dozen different perspectives. The panic as hegemony ships darkened the sky, the desperate evacuation protocols, the systematic hunting of my people through the galaxy. But I also felt their beauty, the transcendent mathematics of their architecture, the peaceful communion of minds linked in perfect understanding, the profound joy they found in preserving the cultural treasures of other species. 35%. The dangerous phase is beginning. She was right. The volume of information was becoming crushing. 70,000 years of accumulated knowledge pressed against the inside of my skull like a star trying to collapse into a black hole. Scientific formulae that could revolutionize human technology. Artistic concepts that had no human equivalent. The locations of wonders and horrors scattered across the galaxy dot, and through it all, I felt Zara's own memories. Her childhood in the crystal cities, learning to access the ancestral knowledge stored in her genetic matrix. The terror of the hegemony attack, watching her world burn while her elders forced emergency downloads into her young mind. 3 years of isolation on this swamp moon, carrying the weight of an entire civilization while hoping someone, anyone, might be willing to share that burden. 50%. Marcus, your neural activity is spiking. I'm reading cascade formation in your temporal lobe. The cascade neural pathways overloading from too much information flowing too fast. I could feel it building, a feedback loop that would burn out my higher brain functions and leave me a drooling vegetable. But I could also feel something else, Zara's consciousness intertwining with my own, her alien mind helping to stabilize the chaotic flow of memory and knowledge. "I'm here," her thoughts whispered directly into mine. "You're not alone." And suddenly, I understood. The bonding wasn't just about preserving her people's knowledge, it was about connection. The Kethver had always been linked, their individual consciousness part of a greater whole. By opening my mind to their memories, I was becoming part of that communion. 60%. The rush of information became manageable as our minds synchronized more completely. I was still Marcus Shaw, but I was also part of something larger. I could feel Zara's loneliness receding as she experienced, for the first time in 3 years, the comfort of mental communion. 75%. Almost there. The final phase was the most dangerous. The complete integration of Kethver knowledge into human neural pathways. I felt my consciousness expanding, accommodating not just facts and memories, but entirely new ways of thinking. My understanding of physics shifted to include dimensions human science had only theorized. My perception of time became fluid, allowing me to see patterns across centuries that had been invisible before. 85%. Marcus, how do you feel? Different, I said, and meant it. The human language felt stars.After, inadequate for expressing the complexity of my expanded awareness. But beneath the alien knowledge, my essential humanity remained intact, strengthened, actually, by its contact with something so fundamentally other. 100%. Integration complete. The neural interfaces powered down, leaving us in the blue glow of the chamber's emergency lighting. But I could still feel Zara's presence in my mind, and she could feel mine. We were bonded now, two consciousnesses sharing the vast library of an extinct civilization. Did it work? She asked, though we both already knew the answer. I accessed a random memory from the archives, the mathematical principles underlying Andromedan poetry, and felt it integrate seamlessly with my human understanding of rhythm and metaphor. The knowledge was alive in my mind, ready to grow and evolve and inspire new discoveries. It worked, I said. Your people live. The whisper that changed everything. We spent 2 days integrating the bonding, learning to navigate our shared consciousness while maintaining our individual identities. The experience was like learning to see with new eyes everything familiar. Took on additional dimensions of meaning and possibility. Zara had changed too. The crushing loneliness that had defined her existence for 3 years was gone, replaced by the comfort of communion she hadn't felt since the destruction of her homeworld. For the first time since I'd met her, she seemed genuinely happy. "Your ship is ready," she announced on the 3rd day, leading me to where the Tin Prophet sat in a clearing she'd carved from the swamp. The repairs were flawless, better than flawless, actually. She'd integrated Kethver technology with human engineering, creating hybrid systems that performed beyond their original specifications. "It's beautiful," I said, running my hand along the hull where she'd reinforced it with crystalline composite. "Armor. You've made her better than she ever was." I had help. She smiled, touching her temple where the silver markings had grown brighter since our bonding. The archived knowledge of 10,000 engineers guided my hands. I should have been eager to leave. I'd accomplished something unprecedented, not just surviving neural bonding with an alien consciousness, but preserving the knowledge of an entire extinct civilization. The cure for the Rigel plague alone would make me famous across the galaxy. The coordinates for those hidden worlds would secure humanity's expansion for generations. But as I stood beside my ship, ready to return to human space, I found myself reluctant to go. 3 years of isolation had made Zara wary of her own kind, but what would my kind make of her? A living repository of knowledge that could revolutionize human civilization, or a threat to be studied, dissected, controlled. You could come with me, I said, to Earth. There are people there who would appreciate what you represent. Scientists, artists, philosophers, who would treat your knowledge with the respect it deserves. Something flickered across her expression, hope, quickly suppressed. And if they don't? If they see me as a resource to be exploited, rather than a person to be protected? I wanted to reassure her, but the truth was complicated. Humans had a mixed record when it came to encountering alien intelligence. Some would see her as a treasure beyond price. Others would see her as a weapon to be controlled. We could be careful, I said. Find the right people first. Build trust slowly. No. Her voice was firm. I've hidden from one species that wanted to exploit my people's knowledge. I won't spend my life hiding from another. We were loading the last of my supplies when the proximity alarms began screaming. Zara's early warning systems, scattered throughout the swamp, detected the energy signatures of multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. The displays in her shelter showed 6 vessels in standard hegemony formation, their weapons already charging. How did they find us? I demanded, but I already knew. The neural bonding had created quantum entanglement between our consciousness, link that sophisticated sensors could track across interstellar distances. It doesn't matter, Zara said, her fingers flying over the control panels as she activated every defensive system she'd built. What matters is that they can't be allowed to capture either of us. The first bombardment shook the ground, destroying several of her outlying sensor stations. These weren't pirates or raiders, this was a hegemony death squad equipped with weapons designed specifically for hunting Kethvo refugees. My ship, I started, won't outrun military interceptors. She was already moving, gathering equipment from storage lockers with the efficiency of someone who'd planned for this moment. But there's another way. She led me deeper into her shelter, to a section I'd never seen before. Hidden behind the makeshift walls was a single-seat escape pod, its hull inscribed with Kethver symbols that seemed to shift and flow in the dim light. Prototype scoutcraft, she explained. Pre-war technology. It's equipped with quantum displacement engines effectively untraceable and faster than anything the hegemony has. What about you? I'm not coming. She turned to face me, and I saw in her expression the same fierce determination I'd glimpsed when she'd first told me about her people. The knowledge is safe. Now you carry it in your mind, where no one can take it away. My purpose is fulfilled. Zara, no. Listen to me. She grasped my shoulders, her alien fingers strong and warm. I've spent 3 years running, hiding, barely surviving. I'm tired, Marcus. Tired of being afraid, tired of being alone, tired of carrying the weight of an entire extinct civilization. But now I'm not alone anymore, am I? Through our neural link, I could feel her emotions as clearly as my own. She wasn't giving up. She was choosing to make a stand. For the first time since the destruction of her homeworld, she felt like she had something worth fighting for. Another bombardment, closer this time. The hegemony forces were tightening their perimeter, systematically destroying everything in their path as they searched for their target. The pod is programmed with coordinates for a safe harbor, she continued, helping me into the craft's cramped cockpit. An old Kethver listening post in the Veil Nebula. From there, you can make contact with the human resistance networks. Come with me, I pleaded. We can both escape. The pod has life support for 2. No. She stepped back, her hand resting on the pod's hatch controls. If I run now, they'll never stop hunting. But if I make them think they've won here, if I give them a victory to report, they might stop looking. She smiled sadly. Besides, someone needs to buy you time to escape. The ground shook again, and through the shelter's failing sensor network, I could see hegemony drop troops landing in the swamp. They'd be here in minutes. Zara leaned into the pod's cockpit, and for a moment, our faces were close enough that I could see the silver patterns beneath her skin pulsing with emotional resonance. "Take me with you. Before they find out I helped a human," she whispered, and I realized she was giving me the words I needed, the story I could tell myself to justify what came next. But through our neural link, I heard what she really meant. Remember us. Remember our dreams, our art, our hopes for the future. Make our knowledge live again in ways we never could have imagined. And someday, when humanity is ready, when they've learned to see beyond species and difference, tell them about the girl who gave everything to preserve the memory of her people. I'll remember, I promised. All of it. Every memory, every dream, every story. Your people will live again through human consciousness. I know. She activated the hatch controls, sealing me into the escape craft. Now go. And Marcus? When you use our knowledge to heal the sick, to find new worlds, to create new art, remember that love made it possible. Love for strangers. Love for knowledge. Love for the infinite possibility of consciousness itself. The pod's engines ignited, and I felt the craft lift through the hidden launch tube she'd constructed. As Kepler's swamp fell away beneath me, I saw the last moments of Zara's stand through the shelter's remaining sensors. She stood in the center of her makeshift home, surrounded by the technological wonders she'd built from the salvage of 100 dead ships. When the hegemony soldiers breached her defenses, she was waiting for them, not cowering, but standing proud, silver markings blazing with the accumulated memories of 70,000 years of civilization. And as my ship entered the quantum displacement field that would carry me beyond their reach, I heard her final transmission, broadcast on all frequencies so that anyone listening would understand. I am Zara, last daughter of the Keffer. We're the memory keepers, the guardians of knowledge, the shepherds of consciousness itself. You may destroy my body, but our memories live on in the human mind that carries them. Through his species' capacity for love and story, we will achieve the immortality that science alone could never provide. The transmission cut off, but through our neural link, I felt her presence one last time, not fear or despair, but a profound sense of completion. She had found what she'd been searching for, someone willing to carry forward the dreams of her people, someone who would transform their preserved knowledge into living wisdom. As I set course for the Veil Nebula and the uncertain future waiting, there I carried within my mind the memories of an entire extinct civilization. But more than that, I carried the story of a girl who chose love over survival, connection over safety, hope over despair. The hegemony thought they had won another victory against the scattered remnants of the Keffer. They were wrong. The real victory belonged to Zara, who had done something her analytically perfect people never could have imagined. She had taught their memories how to love, and in doing so, had made them immortal in ways that went far beyond mere preservation. The neural bonding had changed everything, not just for me, but for the future of human consciousness itself. And it had all begun with a whisper from an alien girl who understood that sometimes the most primitive species can offer what the most advanced cannot: the courage to hope, and the wisdom to remember that love is the only force in the universe, stronger than entropy itself.